Hello, and welcome to another MinMax Tabletop Game Night. One of our 4 new shows for Tuesdays. Tuesday streams. Tuesday Crazy Extremaganza is what we've officially been calling it, right?
That's right. That's right, man. You got it, Jeff Marchiafava.
I'm Jeff Marchiafava. You can see it. It's written right there underneath my little window. This is Ben Hansen, co-host, relegated to co-hostum today.
And you're probably going to call me a cohort at some point. This feels dirty on the side of things. Right. I don't know how this works.
Now you know how it feels. Now I know how it feels running everything. What a nightmare. All these buttons.
By the way, we should set the table for Tabletop Game Night. Some boring stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. We're glad you're here. Thank you so much. Heads up. You can watch all of our shows live by giving us a follow on Twitch. We'd appreciate it. It's another way to help support independent games media. Just give us a follow on Twitch. You get the notification whenever we go live for our big Tuesday streams. Also, since this is, I don't want to spoil anything, it's kind of like a podcast about tabletop games, you can also unlock the podcast version of this discussion on your favorite little podcast app by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/minmax with 2 N's. You unlock the bonus podcast feed if you support us at that $5 tier, where you get all this stuff, the deepest dives, commentary tracks for Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, The Matrix, Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, a bunch of bonus stuff, so you can check that out if you're interested. But I'm sorry, that was too hosty.
No.
Go, take it away, Jeff.
Nightbot's got nothing on you. You're doing an amazing job.
I actually am Nightbot. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Oh, I've known it. Every time I stream, I knew you were the puppet master pulling the strings back there.
That's right.
So, board games, hey, right? That's what's brought us here tonight.
Okay, we need to relax, Jeff. Everybody needs to tell him to take a chill pill. He's talking about his favorite subject, but something about having to press extra buttons for the video overlay has sent him into full sarcasm spiral downfall.
This is the problem. Every time, apparently that's just my default. I come off as either sarcastic or angry when I'm just trying to be enthusiastic. But hey,
okay, well
you're not married to me, so what's your problem?
That's right. Well, we'll see how the stream goes. But here's, just to make you as comfortable as possible, you host this show, and then everybody watching us live on Twitch, just give him course corrections on his tone. Is he too angry? Is he too soft? Is he too sarcastic? Is he perfect all the time? Just keep the feedback rolling on a second.
Just do it all in all caps in the comments every step of the way, and that will make me feel super, super comfortable.
That's right, man.
All right, 2-player games, Hansen.
Yeah, tabletop stuff. We're podcasting about it finally.
Yes. Last week was the first week that we did this, and we just played a game. Month. Whatever. Oh, my God. You have to learn how to be a co-host, too. A cohort that doesn't just have to step in and make every stupid, minuscule correction.
Basic corrections, but so the basic idea is Tabletop Game Night. It's like, hey, this thing could be anything. It could be us streaming some game from Tabletop Simulator, or hell, this could be a podcast every month where we talk about tabletop games. And dare I say, Jeff, maybe we could even take some calls from Patreon supporters. Maybe we could field some questions from Patreon supporters, because I don't know what the number is. I'm going to go with 75 people that support us on Patreon are always like, tabletop stuff, you Neanderthals, give us more tabletop stuff. And so that is what we're hoping to court with this show.
This is for all the non-Neanderthals out there. That's what I like to call them.
That's right. So you came up with this theme of, I want to do a podcast episode, Tabletop Game Night, and I want to make it about 2-player games.
Yeah, I figured let's start with 2-player games. Since we're coming out of a pandemic here, lots of us could only play 2-player games with our wives or spouses or whoever else that we were quarantined with for too long years.
Lovers. Estranged lovers. I'm fascinated by your tabletop history because you were always the expert. People watching the video version, they can see 4,000 games behind you. And then I think the pandemic really, I'm sure it shook up everybody in the way that they play tabletop games. A lot of people moved online for Tabletop Simulator, all that fun stuff. And you in particular, you really cooled it on the group games. And then you're like, all right, I'm all in on 2-player games. But then, look, we don't need to get fully derailed. But then you're like, then having this kid, turns out when you have a young baby running around, there's no time for even just board games in general.
Yeah, it's been a lot of me telling my wife, man, we gotta start playing more board games. And it's like, yeah, pick a time when the child is unconscious for like a 30-minute window that we can actually start playing a game. But we're figuring it out. He's getting a little better about sleeping during the night, so.
I don't know. You were late to a meeting because he pooped his brains out the other day, so I don't know if it's really getting better.
It was 5 minutes before the meeting was going to start. My wife had an errand. He seems to wait until my wife goes on errands, and then he just dumped his diaper as hard as he could right before the meeting was going to start. And it's like, well, there goes that. Jeffem's going to be late to that one.
Has he played a tabletop game yet?
He has not, no.
And how old is this baby?
He's almost 2, so he's way too young so far. But he tries to get his little. He likes actually pulling the games off. I finally put all the games back in order because any of like the 2 lowest rows, he likes getting in there and pushing them all back and pulling them out as much as he could.
Fun.
Yeah.
I would like to do that next time I go to your house. Next time I kick in a window. Wait, you have them organized in order over there?
No, they're on a shelf, as you can see.
Oh, I see.
And you can push them back and they fall over, and he enjoys that. So
that sounds great. I wonder, do they have like my first tabletop game outside of Catan? Am I right, tabletop gamers? But do they have like the Duplo equivalent for tabletop stuff?
I don't know if it goes as young as 2 years old, but certainly by like 3 or 4, there are, little baby kids games.
Right.
A company named Haba makes a bunch of them. In fact, there's one called Animal Upon Animal. I bought a ton of these games for my nieces and nephews because they're all a couple years older than my kids, so I know which ones to get. But Animal Upon Animal is a nice stacking one if you got kids that want to start figuring out their motor skills.
I like it. This is for your future, but my nephews were like 6 and 8. Believe it or not, they're little heathens, and they like more aggressive tabletop games. Like we have a Jaws tabletop game where like one person's playing the shark. It's actually a pretty solid game. You think for like some licensed crap. Have you played Jaws?
No, I'm aware of it though. Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of cool. It's got like multiple phases, right? Of like you're building up around the island, and then second phase, just like the movie, you're like just in the boat, and then you have to like try and figure out where the shark's coming out from. You have to get your gun and like shoot it into the water if you think it's in that spot and all this stuff. But we're not here to talk about Jaws. We're here to talk about 2-player games.
That's right. Which I'm sure Jaws does play 2 players, right? But,
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Which I guess we should note. When we say 2-player games, we're just talking about games that are fun with 2 people. It doesn't specifically just have to be 2-player only.
Right.
I got a couple of those.
Yeah. Stop me from hosting this podcast no matter what. But let's start at, what is your number one, Jeff? And what is your go-to favorite 2-player tabletop experience, do you think?
Oh, great question. It would probably be something like Lost Cities, which is just kind of a small 2-player card game.
Lost Cities?
Yeah, it's by Reiner Knizia. It's considered a classic. But you're basically just building up columns of cards in ascending like numerical order. But it's one of those games where, it takes maybe 20 minutes to play, and it's simple enough that you can jump into it at just about any time.
Building up cards in ascending order. Okay. There's like a fireworks themed game? Is that kind of like this?
Are you thinking Hanabi?
I think so. Is that all about numbers? I don't know, just like the slowly building up numbers thing. That's my only frame of reference.
Not really anything like that, no. But,
Great. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But it's just nice and simple, or what about it makes it your favorite game?
It's simple. I'm kind of switching favorite and just kind of most played, easy to get to the table a little bit.
Right.
It's almost like the mechanisms of it are almost solitaire-esque, but it's kind of a back and forth with your player because there are different colors to the different groups. And you have to decide which ones you want to start, because when you start a row, which is called an expedition, it counts as negative points until you get a certain number of cards into that group. So you don't want to start every single colored group, every column. You want to kind of pick which ones you can do, but by the nature of how the game plays, your opponent's going to probably have half of those cards. And so if they start that column 2, one of you is probably going to get screwed on it. So you're kind of figuring out which ones you want to hold, which ones you discard, which your opponent can access the cards that you discard. So there's kind of an interesting give and take to it as well.
Yeah, and this is dumb. Please forgive me when I'm looking at this. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't speak well, but I think you borrowed this to me, right?
Maybe.
I think a while ago I was like, give me your best 2-player games, and I think this was in the stack because I remember playing this one.
It's entirely possible.
Okay.
I don't remember because I can't remember anything thanks to the 2 years of sleep deprivation. But if you asked me tomorrow, give me some good 2-player games, I would probably grab that one off the shelf. And that was probably the case 2 years ago too. So
yeah, okay, I like it. That seems good. Aramite E watching us live on Twitch. I don't know if this is like another name of some fantasy themed board game or something, but they're saying loaned, which I don't think is a word. I'll have to look that up on I don't know, some sort of tabletop review site. Okay, Lost Cities.
That's a Minnesota thing, right? Right?
I think so.
Where we screw up loan and borrow.
Yes, but the word loan and lent doesn't exist over here. Yeah. You'd get your ass kicked if you say loaned in Minnesota.
Hey, you. Get out of here with your darn loans and borrows.
That's right.
All right. Well, you want to talk about some other 2-player games?
Because I
got a fancy transition to do.
Okay.
You want to see this sucker? Ready for this?
Yeah.
Bam. Oh, look at that.
My God. People watching the video version of this.
I got it all set up. Look at that. It's a little table. That's our little recommendation table there.
So this is your cue that we're going to take calls from the community?
No, this is just, we're talking about other 2-player games.
Wait, so you're using the GIF that Hugo from our community made to represent the Midnight
I just needed something for the background before I start playing B-roll of the videos that I took of the games I was actually going to talk about tonight. Before you.
All right, this is cute. I love it.
Derailed me with Lost Cities. All right, first game. Hanson, you like this?
Yeah.
It's called Great Plains. It's by Lookout Games, and it's a 2-player game.
Great Plains. Hang on, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Jeff produced a video.
I did B-roll for this. It looks better than my webcam, I'll tell you that. Because I set up a whole tripod with my. Turns out my camera can take pretty good video. So
yeah, good lord, Great Plains. This looks like some sort of Catan clone.
Not quite, but I guess there's a little bit of similarities. Basically, this is a 2-player game where there's kind of 2 phases to it, which you'll see as this amazing B-roll goes on. But you put out these hexagon tiles that kind of create this terrain, and your goal is to kind of capture the yellow squares, which are like the meadows, basically. Yeah. And so in the first phase of the game, you're choosing which caves your people are going to come out of during the second phase. It only takes like 20 or 30 seconds to kind of, you and your partner go back and forth picking which caves you come out of. And then in the second phase of the game, you're putting out your actual little colorful meeples there to try and spread out across the map. The caves are your kind of starting locations, and you're spreading out and trying to fill in just the yellow areas is what's going to score at the end of the game.
What are the emotions you get while playing this? That's what I'm always interested in.
The emotions?
I feel like when people talk about tabletop stuff, it's usually just like bogged down and explaining the rules. But it's like I like tabletop reviews where it's like, play this game if you want to laugh a lot with your partner, if you want to be quiet and think, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So this one would kind of be it's a very light area control game where you're basically the crux of the game is you're trying to choose which of the locations you want to actually try and beat your opponent to, and which ones are you just going to give up and cede to them and say, this one isn't worth it, and I'm going to try and go for these other locations. And so it's there. It's I ordered these couple of games in like most basic to slightly more complex, and this one it takes about 2 seconds, 20 seconds to set up. A game of it probably only takes 10 to 15 minutes, but there's still just enough kind of decision making and which place do I go to, which, you have some special abilities that you can get that kind of change up how you can put out your pieces a little bit. And it's just a very kind of simple enough, but enough choices as it goes on to keep you interested.
Now, here's what you don't want to hear, and we don't need to get fully derailed from it, but looking at Great Plains here, it kind of reminds me of Go, right? The old ancient game, like if you're like racing to like conquer territory and figure out what areas you can conquer and which can't. Yeah,
I think it totally fits in that. There's another game that called Through the Desert that also is probably even a little more like Go, but it is similar to this one in that kind of way, where the pieces that you're putting out are kind of connected to the other groups, which actually I don't know if that's a part of Go or not. But yeah, you're kind of creating these little territories for yourself, and it is at its heart a pretty abstract game like Go. You're not gonna get bogged down in the theme of foxes versus snake spirit animals or whatever.
Right.
This one, but I'm
gonna write down for a future episode of Tabletop Game Night. By the way, we have a Go rematch because last time we played was genuinely the most upset I've ever seen you because you were so pissy about it.
Oh, you mean because we just at a certain point we were like, okay, let's just stop playing. We're not going to worry about the rest of it.
No, I was improving the game of Go with my rules, but we don't need to get into it. We'll save it for the Go episode.
That's often what I say when I sit down to play a 3,000-year-old classic game is, how can I improve this?
Look, the end game in Go could be improved. It's, there's amendments to the Constitution every once in a while, Jeff.
That is true. Well, the good thing about Great Plains is it only takes like 10 minutes, and the end game is like 20 seconds.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about it.
That's wild fast. That's shocking.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, there's still enough thought process that goes into it that it'll keep you interested from one turn to the next. So.
Hitmonchan asked, do people in the board game community like Go? What do you think, Jeff?
I think they like it more than chess. I think chess kind of...
What? Really?
I think, chess kind of gets looked down upon a little because it really... Like, when you look at grandmasters and stuff, the way you become a grandmaster is really you play chess so much that you just memorize a lot of moves and board positions, and that's not, the most exciting in terms of... Like, if you want a game where every turn you're like balancing different decisions and stuff, that's not really what high-end chess play looks like.
Have I talked to you about that book? It's called 7 Games. Did I talk to you about this? It's a really interesting book that I think came out earlier this year, but it's the history of 7 different games, and it's like chess and Go, Scrabble, backgammon, bridge, but it's the history of the games, like how they're invented, their evolution, when the masters started to rise, and then how AI conquered the field and how humans learn from the way AI conquered those games. I feel like it's extremely up your alley.
That does sound interesting.
Okay.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Should we
by
keep
the way,
going?
Fun fact, no, we shouldn't. Fun fact, boardgamegeek.com, a very popular website with reviews. The review score for chess, which apparently they date to 1475, the year, comes to 7.2. And the the Board Game Geek review for Go, which they date to 2200 BC, they give a 7.6. So Go is better than chess. You're right.
That's right.
The geeks love it.
I know my Board Game Geeks.
Apparently.
Another game?
Yeah.
Ready for this? Oh, look at that. This one's called Akropolis, and it's from Hachette Board Games, which is a newer publisher that's kind of a lot of people are watching because they're kind of following in the Asmodee route of kind of bringing in a lot of new games. They're kind of doubling down, you might say, on board games, and they've had a lot of interesting games come out. This one is 2 to 4 players, and I've only played it 2 players, but I suspect it would still play perfectly fine at 4 players. But this is kind of a city building game where you and your opponents are going through taking these different tiles that have different colored, like different neighborhoods or whatever, and each of the different colors scores in a different way. And there are quite a few different types of these kind of city games, but this one is, I don't know why I enjoy it as much as I do, but I think it's just it gives you more to think about than, say, Great Plains, but it is still so fast that you can really, like, I played this one 2-player with my brother, and it really is, I'm simulating, a second player's turn by just throwing the piece off the board or off the table, but it really is pretty much that fast, because once your opponent takes a tile, you get to take your next one, and then they go while you're trying to figure out where you put that piece. Games of this also can be like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes max, but it feels like you get a good full game out of it. And so
Akropolis is the name of this one for folks wondering. Akropolis with a K. Yeah,
and you can't really tell from here because it's top down, but you can build up your city as you're going to. You're kind of placing the tiles on top of the other tiles, and they are very big, thick, nice looking tiles.
What is just for the video here? What are you placing these on? What is this surface?
You mean the little baby table that I stole from my 2-year-old son?
I see. It's a white baby table, of course.
Yes, it's a very small table. But yeah, it has variants to kind of make the game a little more advanced if you want some, a little more thinking out of it. But it's just a very quick and snappy game, which these types of games aren't always, because a lot of the time you're thinking, oh, well, do I build a school next to a garbage dump is going to get me negative points, but then there's a park next to it, and they can get very interconnected and kind of clutchy as like people are trying to figure out these things. And here, each tile is so simple to kind of parse what the rules are for scoring that it keeps up at a very snappy pace.
Sweet. Akropolis. Seems cool.
That's Akropolis, yes. This one, my friend, is called Paris, La Cité de Lumière.
Some people pronounce it Paris.
Did I not say Paris?
Oh, I thought you said Paris.
Well, I mean, that the name is written in French, so what do you want?
Yeah.
You can either say the true, authentic French way or not. This one's from Devere. It's a 2-player game, and I kind of added this one because, like Great Plains, there's kind of 2 phases to it. Where in the first phase, you're putting out these tiles that are different colors between, you have orange squares on it and blue squares are the 2 different players, and then you have purple squares, which are the middle. And basically what you're doing is you're building out a blueprint, which during the second phase, you'll be putting those Tetris-shaped city tiles on, and that's how you score. And so it's an interesting kind of pull between the two phases, because you have to take the buildings that you want to build in the first phase in between as you're laying out these different tiles. So it's kind of, I want to put out tiles that will make the shapes of the different building tiles, but I also want to claim the tiles early enough so that you don't look and say, hey, that piece is perfect for Jeffem, so I'm going to take it before he can build it.
Right. I like it. Yeah, I like any game that incorporates some Tetris-looking shapes here.
Yeah, and that has become a very popular genre. They call them polyomino games because they're not always tetrominoes, which would be 4 squares to make up a shape. They can be different numbers, but they're usually very light, very simple games, and this one has a little more intrigue to it just because you have those 2 different phases.
Yeah,
but
so
it's
like,
still...
Wait, would a polyomino, what?
Polyomino? Like
Polyomino.
domino. Domino is 2.
Okay.
Triomino is 3. Tetramino is 4. Poly just means a number / omino.
Right. Would Patchwork, another
Absolutely.
popular player game?
That's a classic polyomino game. Yep.
All right, I'm catching on now.
Yeah, so this one has a little more thought to it, but still plays relatively fast. I think it's like 30 minutes, and very replayable. You have these kind of postcards. The theming on this game is also super great because even the rule book looks like a Parisian newspaper, and all the special abilities that these give you all kind of look like postcards. But you only use a couple of them each game, and you have a big stack of them, so that kind of adds a little bit more nuance and variability to the game. So
awesome. Yeah, it has a really great look. Yeah, the reviews are quite good. I've talked about it before, but Board Game Geek, I feel like every game on there is between a 6.8 and a 7.5. What's going on with that site?
Yeah, I think part of that is just the kind of the way that they, like discoverability of games when you go on there. If you're just kind of browsing through games, they're going to show you the ones that are good. There's like, I think the ranking goes to like 20,000 games. And so there are a fair number of, bad ones. But if you're looking up a game on it, it's probably popular enough that it will land, somewhere between a 6 and a 7.5. It's a harsher scale than, like say the Game Informer scale. Like
right.
You don't get really above an 8 that I've seen, I don't think. And there is a lot of contention as to how they now everybody's saying what's Game Informer in the comments, of course.
Dodge it.
There's a lot of contention as to how they figure out their ratings and how they do their rankings on Board Game Geek. But yeah, so a lot of people don't put a lot of weight into the scores on what BGG says are the best games or their ranking of like the top 100 games. But
okay.
Last game, one more I got for you. The most complicated one is called The King is Dead by Osprey Games. This is a 2 to 4 player game.
Too soon, Jeff. Too soon.
That is true. I guess it's not The Queen is Dead, so we're fine.
Oh, come on. Hey, have some respect.
Ouch, bad timing here. Aramite's giving it to me too. Unbelievable. So this one is another one that I've only played 2 players. I have heard that it's perfectly great at 3 players as well. 4 players as a team is kind of 2 teams of 2 players. But the idea of it is it's kind of like, you've surely played Risk in your time, right, Hanson? Where you're kind of taking over different territories.
Yeah.
In this one, you have the English, the Welsh, and the Scots are all vying for control of England. But unlike a game like Risk, you're not controlling any specific one of those groups. Everyone is controlling all of them. So you're doing it with those cards. You have 8 cards that basically just kind of give you different ways to move those cubes around the board. And you can play out those cards anytime that you want. But so you're going to kind of start going through one territory at a time and deciding which of those 3 factions gets control of that. But whoever has the most influence of the winning group at the end of the game is the one that's going to win. If that makes sense. And so when you play a card, it's going to let you, kind of move cubes around some way. But then after you play that card, you're going to take one of those cubes off the board from anywhere that you want, and you just kind of keep it in the pile in front of you. And that's your influence at the end of the game. And so it creates just like the most interesting surprises where not only do you surprise your opponent with like your strategy completely just changes up, but you end up surprising yourself as well. Because there are times where I was playing this where it's like, okay, my brother had a bunch of the blue cubes, so he wants the Scots to win. So I want the Scots to lose. So when I start playing cards, I'm going to start pulling blue cubes off of the board so that they lose different territories. But now all of a sudden I have more blue cubes than my brother does. So I want them to win because then I'll win by virtue of having more of that color cubes. And so like the rules of it are very simple. Like my brother and I probably took 10 minutes reading through the rules and kind of explained everything. And then we just kind of sat and stared at the board and tried to figure out like what those rules actually mean for how you're playing through the game. So it's a really thinky game and it's a really crunchy game because you have the 8 cards, and so you're only making 8 moves throughout the entire game. And you kind of choose when you want to play those cards. Otherwise, you're just passing, and then you're just kind of figuring out one territory after another. Yeah. And so, but it's such an interesting idea, and it's so unlike any other game. So if you're looking for something that's, you know, a more complicated and more strategic game, it's super interesting, and it's such a tight little design the way these kind of interlocking systems work that I would highly recommend it.
I love it. I want to borrow this from you. The King is Dead.
Absolutely.
This looks really cool. I like it. Sweet. Great videos, Jeff. I'm very impressed. I'm blown away by the production here.
That's right. Well, you know, it only took us like 3 years to get this up and running, so.
Yeah, there's the names of all these games in the description, by the way, for the podcast version or on YouTube if you want to see the spelling of any of those.
Yeah. So how about you, Hanson? What are your favorites?
Yeah, it's tough. 2-player games, I think, are really a tough mold to fit into. And I think some of our favorites are just like 4-player games that we just play in 2 players. And some of them, you know, naturally break apart. And it's like, this just sucks with 2 people. Mm-hmm. But some of them I think hold up pretty well. And one of them that's my favorite for 2 people is Splendor. It's a popular one, but Splendor. But it's typically with 4 players, and it's all about building up a gem economy, I guess is the best way to put it. But I think it's one of those games that I appreciate the design and the momentum you have. It's like, okay, I'm getting better and better. Now I have these pieces, so now I can automate this and get more green gems because of this, and everything's rolling in. Oh, it turns out I won, or oh, it turns out I lost. But I think with a larger group with Splendor, it's a really quiet, thinky game. And I think, I don't know if I like bigger group games where it's so quiet. And so I think Splendor actually works better as a 2-player game, and you can focus more on like strategy and blocking your opponent. I assume you've played Splendor.
Yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That ends up being a criticism a lot of Euro games, where it's kind of, do you want a game where everyone is just kind of focused on what they're doing and there's not a lot of interaction between the players, or do you want something where you're all kind of looking at a shared board and moving around pieces together and interacting more? But yeah, there are certainly plenty of games where the strategy of it kind of falls apart if you have too many people to kind of track what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and people in the chat on Twitch are, wow, apparently they're making a 2-player specific version.
Yep, they just announced it, and I think it is going to be fairly different from kind of normal Splendor. The person who's doing it, I think his name is Antoine Bauza, I want to say, and he is becoming known for kind of creating these 2-player spin-offs. One of them, which is another one that I absolutely could have recommended, is Seven Wonders Duel. And Seven Wonders is a larger game that plays up to 7 people, I think. And they created a much smaller 2-player version of it. He did it as well.
Oh, and, interesting.
And that's a super thinky, interesting take on Seven Wonders. I like it more than, you know, the big version of Seven Wonders. And so I am interested in when I saw them announce that, at first I was like, I don't know if, every game doesn't need a 2-player version. But when I saw that he was the one who was working, I was like, okay, I'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, I like Seven Wonders Duel. I'll have to check that out. So it's coming out in November of 2022. And it's an Asmodee joint. So they're Minnesota-based here. So that'll be interesting. And they've also, full disclosure, have supported us in the past, and we've promoted them on the podcast. Speaking of full disclosure, we've promoted them on the podcast in the past. I said it during our ad reads, but still, even though we're not doing an ad read right now, I stand by it. My favorite 2-player game for tabletop stuff is Dust Biters. We have played so much Dust Biters.
I think you have well verified that you're not just doing that because they were a supporter. You've made everyone that you know play that game. And when we played it, like, your cards were so beat up from the number of times that you have played it. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's a relatively simple card game where the entire game is, I think just like 24 cards, something like that. And it's Mad Max inspired, and you're in a caravan and you're rearranging your cards and using the cards as really unique powers. And every card is a car and they all have different abilities, and you're battling it out. And at the end of every turn, the card in the back of the convoy gets destroyed by the dust or whatever the hell lore reasons going on there. But I am really in love with how simple and beautiful that design is. And we have had so much fun. And also, like, we're a sucker for any 2-player game where it's just, you can put the 24 cards in your pocket, then just go to a brewery and have a good time. You're not gonna have to haul around a whole box with you. So Dust Biters is my still favorite 2-player game.
Yeah, it's a solid one. Yep.
Thank you. God, I'm so happy you didn't hate it.
Yeah, no, it was I could instantly see why you liked it so much. And I feel like I sat there much longer than you, just kind of staring at that line of cards and being like, what should I do next? And you were like, hey, I got, other videos to record, like 3 hours from now. So how about we move it along?
Yeah. It's a struggle to get you out of your house, and it's a struggle to get you back in your house, Jeff. That's right. What we've learned.
Yep.
Yeah. Should we take some calls?
Yeah, let's see what the community likes. How about that?
That sounds great.
All right.
Do you know how this works?
Yeah, people raise their hands and then they can hop on up here and tell us what games they enjoy.
Sure. And it's not even 2-player games, it's just anything under the sun.
No, it should be 2-player games. Otherwise, we're going to kick you out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay, I might have reworded that in the post. But yeah, somebody throw your hand in the air if you want to come on and podcast with us. SG Mills. I'm on it, Jeff. I'm on it. I'm inviting them to speak.
Do it.
I'm doing it right now. Hello, SG. Welcome to the show.
You may be muted.
You may be muted. You are, in fact, muted.
Can you hear me now?
Hello.
There we go.
We got you. How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
Good. Good luck to Jeff for writing those audio levels. But thanks for calling in. Is it? I feel like I don't see your name too much. Is it Party Chat just in a tough time normally?
Yeah, I normally work on Mondays, so I can't make it in for Party Chat. I made it in once, like a month or so ago. But yeah, just a big fan of GI and MinMax.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And you're a big fan of tabletop stuff?
Yeah. I wanted to talk about another game that was advertised on MinMax that my wife and I really got into, The Initiative.
Oh, isn't that cool?
Very cool game. That's another one that's 4 players, but we played it 2 players, played through the whole thing. My wife and I really loved it. I love legacy games and all the weird legacy components and like weird hidden things in the box.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, escape room, puzzle room adjacent combined with a legacy game. And I loved it so much, and I gave Jeffem a copy and said, you will enjoy this. Did you ever check it out, Jeffem?
Look, it's still on the shelf. Yeah, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it real soon. I swear.
Right after Red Dead Redemption, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's brutal. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. The question is, SG Mills, like, how much replayability is there without spoiling anything? But kind of the fun is like where that game goes and the surprises involved. And so I gave my used copy to Jeffem, and I'm curious to see what kind of effect it'll have on him.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff you can do after you beat the main game. And I've tried to bring it to some groups, but we've never been able to play it after beating the main thing. So I don't know how well that holds up. Yeah.
Do you think it works well as a 2-player game?
Oh yeah. No, it works great. the puzzles aren't like super hard, so it worked really well. It's not as deep or challenging as something like a full legacy game like Pandemic Legacy or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice casual evening, just sitting around solving some word puzzles. We had a lot of fun with it.
Right on. Yeah, I love it. I definitely recommend it. The Initiative was the name of that one. And just so you know that I'm not totally bought and paid for, like that developer, God, I forget their name, but they made a game called Voices in Your Head.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was kind of their follow-up. And that one I wasn't as crazy about. I don't know if you checked that one out, SG Mills.
I did not. I saw some mixed reviews for it, so...
Yeah. The Initiative I think is really cool, but Voices in Your Head I played once and I was like, I think I'm good. But yeah, thanks for calling in, SG Mills.
Yeah, absolutely. This was great.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anybody else want to throw their hand in the air? Want to jump up to the main stage? Talk about tabletop? Captain Cobblepot would not miss it for the world. You know how this person is. And I'm curious what everybody else is doing here. They're just kind of, they don't want to talk. They just want to hang out and party chat instead of just watching on Twitch.
Hey, sure.
I'm not here to judge. Captain Cobblepot, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, really well. Nice to hear your voice. How's it going?
Yeah, so Jeff, I'm a new Dice Tower guy or something. Like, are we going to expect your seal on some games moving forward?
Maybe at some point.
Hey,
not
yes,
really. Don't take that seriously.
Wait, help me out. Dice Tower, that's a show?
Just a YouTube channel that like is highly regarded in the board game community. They kind of put their stamp of approval on different games, so
are they the
prestigious.
Are they the ones that had that video, Jeff, where it was Trey Parker's top 10 games?
Yep. That was
okay, and that's how I found Summit, which is one of my favorite co-op games going on these days, because that was Trey Parker's favorite.
There we go. Yeah, they kind of got me into board games. Started following their channel a couple years ago, so good content there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up Space Base. I feel like that's a really popular one that a lot of people I saw in the comments were talking about too. I don't know if either of you have played that or not.
I have.
No.
And yeah, I super love that one as well. The idea of it is that you kind of have a row of cards that I think are numbered between 2 and 12, and then you roll 2 dice each turn, and those are the cards that get activated based on the numbers of them.
It's very much an improved formula on like Machi Koro.
Yeah,
I think it kind of took over that in my house at least, just because the aesthetics of it are pretty awesome too. I just love the visuals, but it just becomes highly competitive with 2 players, and my wife and I are really competitive players. So, it's a lot of fun. Just I don't really like dice games, but she's a big fan. But with this game, there's a lot of manipulation. So I'm always on board for when you can use cards to your benefit, gain abilities, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I played that one with my wife, and she just destroyed me by like 100 points. And I didn't realize it until we got to the very end, and she just completely murdered me. And I was like, But I still had fun the entire time, just kind of building up your engine of how you're going to score points. I just spent too much time on the building and not enough time on the scoring, as it turned out. But that's a great suggestion as well. Yeah.
Space Base is the name of that one, if folks want to look it up. Thanks so much for your support, Captain Cobblepot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care. Shazara wanted to talk about a game in particular. Hello.
Hello. I'm on push to talk. That's good to know.
You got it. What's happening?
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring up Inhuman Conditions and ask if either of you have played it.
No.
I haven't. No.
Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
No.
Okay, so it's from the co-creators, I think, of Secret Hitler, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Okay.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I've played a lot of that.
Okay, so Inhuman Conditions, it's really quick. It's like 5 to 10 minutes long, and it's 2-player only. And it's kind of like an interrogation game where one person is the investigator, one person's the suspect.
Weird.
Okay.
Yeah, and the investigator is trying to figure out whether the suspect is a human or a robot.
Is it... God, that seems bizarre, because I feel like with a game like Secret Hitler or Avalon, it's kind of nice when you can hide in a crowd, but if it's just a partner at a table staring at you and glaring for an hour or however long, like that seems so stressful.
So it's a mix of mechanics and also kind of like the social, I don't know, flexibility or manipulation. That's what it is, like social manipulation games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what the term is, something like that. But the art, by the way, in this Inhuman Conditions, it looks awesome.
Yeah, I actually have a Kickstarter edition here.
Oh,
It came in
nice.
right before the pandemic. I was so excited. It came in right before the pandemic, and then we had to wait a couple years to actually play it.
So does it kind of feel like that the test from Blade Runner, right? Where you're like just testing people and running through questions to see if they are human?
Yeah, kind of. It's got a little more mechanics to it than that, but yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
I love it. And does it, if you're in the hot seat, is it stressful?
I mean, I think it all depends on how good you are at lying. So no.
Yeah, interesting.
Is it a game where if your partner or spouse doesn't like lying games, is this going to be kind of a no-go?
Right.
Probably a no-go, yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if they have a print and play, though, like a lot of games had over the pandemic. So
Yeah. It is my favorite thing. Like, I've played a lot of Avalon in my days and Secret Hitler and stuff, and it always makes me laugh when like playing with couples, because it feels like cheating when you just like look at the person's partner and be like, hey, is this person lying? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. Like, to the fact that like it's just like a cheat shortcut in lying games. So like if it's just one-on-one, I feel like that'd be such a weird dynamic.
yeah, I know, it's great. I love it. I know that I think, some people might not feel great about the one-on-one thing, because I guess it could be stressful if I don't know, if you take it very seriously.
Yeah. That seems cool though. Inhuman Conditions. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. That is all I wanted to bring up because I really enjoyed it. And it's such a short, snappy game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love it. Thanks so
that
much.
helps for social deduction games, I think.
Yeah.
You don't have to it's harder. Yeah, it's
long.
harder to kind of have your feelings hurt if you're not sitting there for an hour and a half before someone betrays you or lies to your face. If it's just kind of a short thing, that's an easier sell.
Ooh, Aramite points out that you should print it and play it with me, Jeff. That'd be a good episode of Tabletop Game Night.
I'm sure we could. Yeah.
All right, let me write it down. I assume it's on. I don't know. Do you think it would work in Tabletop Simulator, Shazara?
I think it would. Hitmonchan says in the chat that they have actually modified Rules of Clover video chat too, which I haven't tried, but that sounds interesting.
Okay, I like that. That's a good idea for sure. Sweet. All right,
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump up and talk about games, tabletop stuff? All right, Bobby Buell's interested. Throw your hand in the air if you want to join as well. Hello, Bob Buell.
Oh, howdy, gang.
That's not fair. That's not fair. How's it going, Bob?
Oh, it's going good. How are you gentlemen doing tonight?
Good. Jeff, as long as you remember to right click and adjust the volume levels so that they seem decent, then I'll be just dandy.
All right.
But what tabletop game you want to talk about there, Bob?
Well, it kind of blurs the lines of tabletop, I would say, a little bit, and it's a little bit more old school, but I think I've only ever played it 2-player, so I wanted to bring it up here. It's from 1985. It's called the Clue VCR Mystery Game.
Love it. Love it.
Are you at all familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so it is essentially a VHS tape that you had back in the day. You can now find it on YouTube for free and whatever other versions. And the gist of it is you have to watch a scene acted out in like this comedic, corny, over-the-top style in this video with everyone playing all the classic Clue characters. Right. And then after the scene is done, you have to pay very close attention and jot notes down as to what's happening in the scene. Then you start picking off a deck of cards. And on your cards will be specific clues based on things that happened in that scene. Like the woman with the brown shoes was murdered. And then you can put on your little fact sheet like, oh, well, Miss Scarlet had the brown shoes in this scene, so I know she's the victim in this. Or, the weapon Colonel Mustard was holding in the kitchen, that's the one that was used. So now you have to remember back to the scene in that video of what he was holding during that time.
This seems amazing. So so you can find this thing on YouTube.
Yes.
The Clue VCR mystery game. And then what do you need physically?
You do need the cards because they're going to contain there's I think 6 levels of difficulty you can play. So you can play different games, watching different scenes. You can, it's not just like a one and done after you've just watched the video once. It's over.
Right.
So you do need the cards. Some of them are available on eBay for relatively cheap. It seems like this thing was, overproduced maybe in the 80s. So it's not super expensive on eBay.
That sounds really fun.
It is a blast because the video itself is just again, so over the top and cheesy and fun. And half the time you're just making fun of it. And then the other half you're taking it super seriously because oh, I remember this clue and this other person doesn't. And now I have the advantage. It's fantastic.
All right. I'm writing it down as well. This is really just us collecting ideas for tabletop game night.
Yeah, for sure.
In the future, but that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and also if you're, even if you're interested in the game or not playing it, it's not going to spoil anything. There is a documentary about the game on YouTube called Who Did It? The Clue VCR mystery game, where they got everyone from the cast that was still alive, which is majority of them, and interviewed about their time acting in this game, in this video. And it is fascinating, especially for someone like me who played it growing up and was this is a niche thing that no one knows about, and apparently one person on YouTube did and made a documentary about it. That's awesome. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, Mally Firestorm on Twitch calls it an early Sam Barlow joint. I'd imagine it feels like that.
Very much so.
Weird. All right, I love it. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right. Anybody else want to jump up and talk from the community? Raise your hand or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, Jeff, you got some hot questions from people writing in, right?
We do, yeah. We can hop back over and
I'll meet
take a
you
look
there.
at some questions.
Yeah, we put these questions from over on Patreon.
That's right. And if you support us on Patreon, you could leave us a question for a future episode anytime you want.
That's right.
Here's one from Nate Sickler. He asked, what are your favorite gamer-ass games to play? The more complicated strategic games you wouldn't play with grandma.
The kind you don't take home to mother.
I wanted your answer to this just to kind of get a sense of how deep you going down that strategy rabbit hole.
Yeah, Pandemic Legacy, I guess, but I'm trying to think of the most complicated game. Seven Wonders Duel, I guess, was maybe it for a while. This is a stumper. I'm really trying to think of the games that's just too much for my brain to handle. I don't know. What do you think? What's your limit?
I think it's tough because these are my wife's favorite games. She likes the really long, dry Euro games. So there's one called Terra Mystica that was a long one for us. And it is it's too complicated to even try to explain. You're kind of building up on this shared map, and you the way that you putting out different buildings on the terrain tiles that you're also terraforming, and there are lots of different tracks that you can move your pieces up on. It was a fun game, but it's a hefty one to learn and then play on top of it.
I'm trying to I don't know. I think most games, I always think in the back of my mind, maybe I could teach my parents this. We taught them, it was last year, but then also we taught them again this summer how to play Catan. And it was their ears were bleeding. They were really having a tough time with it, which is fine. I have a tough time learning tabletop games as well. But there's still a part of me that thinks God, I'd really love to get them to play Betrayal on the House on the Hill, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And if you have somebody who knows what they're doing and can kind of guide you through it, I think stupid old boomers could handle that, right?
Yeah. I played that one with my parents.
Oh, really?
And it was a terrible time.
Oh, okay. All right. See, yeah, maybe it's ambitious. It
wasn't even that. I think, and I want to chalk it up to, they weren't really. I don't think they were really into the theme of it that much. You know, there's a lot of reading cards of like, ooh, you hear a spooky noise and that kind of thing, and they just kind of weren't into that. And then I think we just had a bad roll in terms of what the end game scenario for it was, because it ended up kind of being like a treasure hunt that we were all kind of trying to find a treasure, and my mom got poisoned, so she was losing health every turn, and it just did not
help
go over
me,
well.
Jeffrey, help me.
Yes. But there was also like absolutely nothing she could do about it. It was just like, you're going to die in X number of turns, and that's just the way it is. And so
yeah, I mean, I know that's the critique of the game, but I love it because when it hits and the ending scenario works out well, it's like some of the most fun tabletop gaming I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I can see how that would be the case. It just
Truffaut. Yeah, I get it. Truffaut watching us on Twitch asked if we've ever tried the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which is like the D&D themed one. I have tried that one. He says that it's not so good. I don't know. I definitely prefer the original, but I got nothing against that Baldur's Gate version.
Let's see what else we got here. Starkiller asked, he said, I won't be able to make the stream tonight because Tuesdays is our weekly Magic the Gathering night. Do you guys have any experience with Magic or any similar trading card games?
No, I think the most I've ever dabbled is I went to the Pokemon World Championships in 2019, and
you were in the championships?
Yeah, I won the championships in 2019. But they had kind of like boot camp learning stations off to the side of like, oh, we'll teach you how to play the Pokemon trading card game. Because like I collected those cards as a kid, but like I never knew how to actually play. And they gave you like a starter deck and stuff. And it was really an eye-opening experience where like going through that, I was like, this is super fun. I think I'd actually like to collect Pokemon cards, but of course it's unreasonable because I'm not a millionaire. Which I guess you have to be these days to play their stupid card game. But that kind of kindled something in me. I was like, ooh, am I missing out by not playing some of these collectible card games just because I think they're all too expensive?
Yeah. I had a couple of, like the starter decks in Magic when I was a teenager. And that's about as far as I got. I never got into the actual collecting aspect of it. And I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't. It's one of those things that very much feels like if you're not into it, it feels like a money trap. And I think even if you are into it, most people seem to recognize that it's a money trap. But it seems like Magic has kind of, I think they recognize that. And so it sounds like in recent years, there are a lot of kind of one-off, like you can buy something that will come with just a couple decks that are already ready to play and that play well against one another. And I always kind of... And anytime I see that, or anytime that they come out with a new video game version, I'm like, maybe I should give Magic another chance.
Maybe someday.
Yeah. Truffaut, speaking of Catan earlier, Truffaut says, our gaming group has fallen in love with the classic Catan lately. Surely there's better versions of it created. Can you recommend something more modern that's similar?
That's a great question. I'd also love to know, because I love Catan, but... I'm still in the camp of like, oh, are any of these expansions, would they extend it to be interesting? But maybe there's just another replacement game altogether. I don't know. Yeah. I think there are a number of different versions of Catan that I haven't really played any of them, so I don't know. It seems like I think the reason the game is a classic to begin with is it is a very unique mix of different, like trading and building up a city and those kind of things. I don't think there's anything that's quite one-on-one with that. But Machikoro is one that we mentioned earlier that I guess you could also throw Space Base into that of if you if you like the dice aspect of it. Or else there's also a game called Stone Age that I like it's not super similar, but I think it's a similar weight to the game. Kind of like if you like about that complexity of a game, Stone Age is a really interesting one where you have a bunch of little cavemen meeple that you're sending out to different spots to do different actions, but there's also some dice rolling in it that determines like how many resources you get from each group, and it kind of has a building up aspect to it that's similar to Catan. Right on.
So I would say check that one out. Kudus, which if you're part of the Discord, like Kudus gives just the greatest rundowns of the games that he plays in the Discord, in like our board game Discord channel. Like he's always in there with pictures of the latest games that he plays and excellent kind of rundowns of them. I have many a time like looked over one of those and then written down names of games based on what he's been playing. But he said he couldn't be here tonight either, but he asked, do you have a favorite board game designer or publisher, someone you look forward to new releases from?
God, I'm not smart enough to get to that point. I'm still impressed when you were able to pull out the name of the publishers and stuff. I kind of know Asmodee because they worked with us. So I have a rough sense of their camp. But outside of that, no. Like, how do you get so informed on all this stuff, Jeff?
You watch way too many videos and you buy way too many board games, and it starts to sink in.
Yeah.
For that one, I would say there's a company called Days of Wonder, which they made Ticket to Ride is their most well-known game. And they usually come out with like one game a year, and they have always been very highly produced. Their games have kind of been trending more simpler in recent years, but that's one where just based on the production values alone, I'm always kind of, and the fact that they only do one a year, I'm always kind of interested in seeing what their newest game is.
Yeah. Oh, Heat, the racing game. Was that the one you played with Reiner back at Game Informer that time?
That was Downforce?
Downforce, that's right. I remember there was some tabletop racing game that seemed interesting.
Yeah, that. They have made, they've made a bunch of, they made one called Five Tribes, which I super like. Yeah, I mean, pretty much once a year, there's always kind of an interesting, like, what's Days of Wonder's new game, and is it interesting or not?
Yeah,
is it going to be interesting?
Cool.
And in terms of designers, I'm a sucker for Reiner Knizia, who is like just the most prolific game designer. He's designed like 600 games, and he's a mathematician first and foremost, and so he gets a lot of crap from people because he really runs the spectrum of like good to just like this is a total cash-in type of game. I mean, if you're designing 600 games, you know, you're not spending years on every game that you put out. But it's one that if I hear that a game is made by him, I'm not necessarily excited about it. But if I already thought the game looked kind of interesting, if I hear that it's him, it's like, okay, I'll give that one a go.
Right on.
Joseph H. asks, what do you think about games that ask you to destroy pieces, i.e. tear a card up after its use, or to limit or eliminate the possibility of replay? Does it add to the experience by making the game higher stakes, or is it more often a ripoff?
I haven't gotten to the point, and maybe it's just, I don't know, I have too many games now, but I haven't gotten to the point of where I've been bummed out. I felt like it's a ripoff to play a legacy game that's had me destroy stuff. Like, it feels bold at the time, but it turns out you're probably not going to go back and play most of the games you've already bought, so the idea of ripping stuff up as you go is not the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've talked about this, where I was very hesitant at the idea of a legacy game when I first heard about it, where I was like, you can only play it 12 times. Right. And then over the time I realized it's more like, I have to play this 12 times, you know, in order to get the full experience. Like, that is a decent number of plays. I can understand it because board games, and especially sometimes legacy games, do cost a lot. And so that idea of like, I'm only going to get an X number of games out of it. But realistically, like, if I looked at the shelf behind me and counted the number of games that I've played more than 12 times, I would really question what I was doing with my life. So I don't think they're trying to force people into buying more games. I think it's just kind of this avenue that some designers are interested in exploring, and I think it probably works more than it doesn't.
Yeah.
Crispy asks, a question I would have is if you have a certain time limit you like games to go on for. I usually feel that anything that is designed to go past the 2-hour mark is usually too much for me. I've played some great games that do play longer than that, but they are usually just so exhausting that it's hard to have the desire to ever play them again.
Yeah, I feel like that how long a game session, little prompt on the box, it's very misleading because the main time that you're looking at that and trying to figure out how much time it's going to take to play this is the first time you play it, which means always take that number and double it.
At least. Yep.
Yeah. It's just brutal. Like, I think for me, even like a game of Betrayal, which might take a while or something, like certainly anything over 2 hours, I don't think I can do.
Yeah, I think 2 hours is the max for me too. If it's telling me that it's 2 hours, it's probably going to be 4 for my wife and I just don't.
Yeah.
I have more and more, especially as you mentioned, having a kid. I've more appreciated games that are like, this is a half an hour, which still might be an hour, but that feels like a good amount of time for me at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Denim Harry asks, what is your experience with Gloomhaven specifically, but also legacy games as well? I find them so energizing to just fly through them in a few nights, but I know many people don't agree.
I've never played Gloomhaven. I know it's the favorite of the world.
Yeah,
so I feel out of the loop.
I've only played the digital version, and I've only played a couple missions in it. And it is super thinky. You might like checking out the digital version just because it handles all the rules and stuff.
Now that I think about it, because it came out recently, right?
Yeah, not too long ago, and they did a really good job with it. But yeah, They came out with kind of a simpler version of it called Jaws of the Lion. That is kind of a more condensed version of it that I haven't gotten to the table yet. But even that, I'm a little scared just because of the kind of the rules overhead of it. But yeah, I think it has been the #1 game on Board Game Geek for a long time, so it's certainly I can appreciate it. And I can appreciate everything in terms of the design. It's a very smart and interesting design, but I can appreciate Harry for being able to devote that much time to it and kind of to play through a legacy game that fast that's a lot of playing in a short amount of time.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it on Steam. And it seems, I don't know, I'm annoyed by the fact that it has online co-op, but then it says it's single player. Like, I would love it if I could just play it on the Steam Deck and like pass the Steam Deck around and like play some multiplayer version there or something. But I guess that's a pretty specific use case.
Yeah. Sean Robbins with a short question here: plastic or wooden components? I probably prefer wood just as it feels better, but metal coins are hard to beat. If you're gonna throw metal coins in there, I mean.
Yeah, you gotta go wood. I think that's too fun.
Yeah,
anything weighty, anything heavy is better.
Yeah, and it's like there are some miniature games where I appreciate, all the little very detailed sculpts and stuff like that, but just most of the time I would probably, maybe I'm lame, but I would probably just prefer a little wooden silhouette of a meeple or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
That feels good to me. Last question. Philly Yeatsteak says, I work with kids and I need some new games that I can play with them while talking. We do a lot of Uno, Sorry, and Trouble, but I'm looking for something more interesting. So just...
yeah. Got it. Monopoly Deal.
Monopoly Deal.
The answer... Have you played Monopoly Deal, Jeff?
I have not. You're telling me this is a good version of Monopoly, though?
It genuinely is. It's... like my wife's family is obsessed with it, and they got us into it, and then I got my family into it, and then my family's spreading it to everybody else. It is the next rung up from Uno, but has some of those similar vibes, and it's just chaos. But I think, because we've all turned our back on Monopoly, we all think we're snobs, but Monopoly Deal is actually like a really well-designed party-ish chaotic card game. It's really fun. It feels Mario Party-esque with just the amount of like, oh, now you're screwed or now you win, but it's super fun.
Okay, the chat has your back on that one.
Yeah, so. Check it out, Jeff.
Okay, I will. I got 2 games. One is called No Thanks, and the other one is called Take a Number, which in other countries it's called Six Nimmt. But they're both by a publisher called Amigo Games, and they're both very simple card games as well. that give you a little bit more, like interesting thought in terms of it's mostly both of them are just kind of you're either choosing whether you want to take a card or not, or you're choosing which card to play down into different groups. But they both have a more interesting wrinkle than just kind of the chaos of an Uno. So, and they both play higher player counts. I think they can go up to like 7 players. So check those out as well.
Sweet.
That's a ton of games that we covered this week. I think everyone should hopefully be able to walk away with some games that they want to check out and play.
I would imagine so. Great job, Jeff. Look at you. Now you're comfortable in it. You're doing it, dude.
All right.
You've come full circle.
Is there anything we should plug, Hanson? Upcoming stuff.
You betcha. We got the new episode of Trivia Tower happening on Monday. That's September 26th at 8 p.m. Central. If you are a $2 supporter on Patreon, you can jump in and compete to win game codes. We have a ton of game codes to give away. Some great indie stuff like Roller Drome. I'm trying to remember some other big indies that we have, but there's good stuff, I swear. And Chris Kohler, who we had on the MinMax Show podcast not too long ago, they're going to be our co-hosts. So please jump in and compete in game trivia. Because we've had a whole stretch of like us versus other outlets. This is just a good old-fashioned vanilla episode, so your odds are even higher of winning this. And then next month might be another themed episode. So this might be your last chance to jump in and compete for at least a month. So everybody get ready to compete in Trivia Tower Monday, September 26th.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks for being here with me, Hanson.
Hey, thanks for having me, dude. Love it. It'll be fun to get some feedback on what people want from the future. We certainly have a lot of ideas now for tabletop stuff through Simulator or some other means at some point. Yeah, for sure. We are open to ideas, so throw them at us in the Discord. Until next time, Hanson, give us your favorite tabletop gaming sign-off. Okay. Shuffle, 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 dice roll, aces. Shuffle, shuffle, dice roll. Perfect. Thank you. See ya. Did you know that you can more than double the amount of podcasts from MinMax every single week by supporting us at the $5 tier on Patreon? You don't have to listen through the browser or anything dumb like that. You'll get access to a private RSS feed if you support us on Patreon. You put it in your favorite podcast app, and then bam, you can listen to our weekly bonus podcast Party Chat, the podcast versions of The Deepest Dives, MinMax interviews, Max spoilers, and you get the MinMax Show podcast a day earlier than everybody else. So please help support independent games media. Head over to patreon.com/MinMax with 2 N's.